we'll do a connections activity in a minute or two, but if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, that is always welcome. And we will also shortly be introducing our facilitators for today. And a few technical notes before we dive into our workshop content. Just a reminder that we do record these webinars and workshops so that we can post them on maicp.org. And we also have closed captioning available using Otter during the workshop. So if you want to activate closed captioning, please follow the directions on the screen. So as I mentioned, we are asking you to update your Zoom name, include your name and pronouns when you're editing your Zoom name, and please put the name of the school that you're affiliated with so that we can place you in a breakout room. And then in just a second, I'm going to launch a poll, and that's our connections activity for today, because we really want to hone in on the guiding principles and the way that they provide a framework for thinking about the application and designation process and planning for pathways. So we're going to ask you in a minute which guiding principle you are finding most challenging in the planning process and the design process leading up to submitting your Part B application. So I'm going to launch that poll, and while you are thinking about the question, I am going to also move forward into introducing our team for the workshop today. Here comes the poll. And here come the introductions. So my name's Annie Leonard. I'm the Director of Coaching at the Center for Collaborative Education and the Innovation Career Pathways Lead for CCE. And I'm joined by a couple of CCE colleagues today, including Allison, who is our Director of Systems. Allison is your person. If you run into any technical difficulties during the workshop, feel free to pop her a message. She'll also be creating the breakout groups. Also joining us today are Corbett and Scarlett, who are members of the coaching team at CCE, and they will be among the breakout room facilitators today, as will our DESE partners. So I'll pass to Jennifer, the Innovation Pathways lead for DESE, to introduce herself and DESE colleagues.
Good morning, everyone. I apologize. I'm a bit under the weather, so I may not be my usual cheerful self, just trying to push through, but really glad that all of you are here today. Thank you for persevering with the process. We know that embarking on the designation is a true commitment, and we're grateful for that. I will pass the microphone over to my colleague, Latoya.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Latoya Tavernier. I am a liaison in the Office of College, Career, and Technical Education. I work with Jennifer as her partner in crime in Innovation Career Pathways, and I'm also the district liaison for about 16 school districts pertaining to their career technical education programming, including Chapter 74, non-Chapter 74, and Innovation Career Pathways. So I'm happy to work with whoever's in my facilitation group, and everyone else, good morning.
Thank you, Latoya and Jennifer. And as you all know, we are really happy to have a team of Innovation Career Pathway peer ambassadors probably lots of you have already interacted with one or more than one of them in your planning process and going through the Part A application and preparing for Part B. So 3 of these peer ambassadors are with us today to serve as breakout room facilitators. They are Jessica Callanan from Reading Memorial High School, Meredith Erickson from Carver Public Schools, and Anne Marie Strode from Bourne High School. So we welcome them as well. And I see about 3/4 of you have now answered the poll question. So I am going to pull those results up so we can take a look and see which of the guiding principles you are finding most challenging. So can I see a thumbs up if those results are visible now? Latoya can see them. Okay, cool. What I'm seeing in the results is some real distribution across the guiding principles, and want to ask if any of my co-facilitation team want to comment on what you're seeing there. So it's not a surprise that we see your responses spread across all 5 guiding principles, and that's one of the reasons that we've chosen the guiding principles as the framework for today's workshop. So what our goals for today are to help prepare you to submit a successful Part B application. We're going to do that by providing both expert guidance and opportunities for peer feedback in the breakouts. We want to increase your familiarity with some of the tools and resources that past applicants have found are most supportive when trying to design effective and equitable pathways. And as always, we hope that you will make connections across our network. We're going to do that by wrapping up our introductions momentarily, and going into a review of those guiding principles, where we'll talk a little bit about each one and invite the peer ambassadors in the room to share their thoughts, insights, and lessons learned as they went through the Part B process. Then we're going to spend a little time with the Part B application criteria tool. This is the tool, the document that was shared with you in the advance email that was sent out. And don't worry, if you don't have it, we will send out that link again so that you can use that tool live during this workshop, or if you and your team have already started to use it, that this will be a chance to dive back in. And then by about 9:40, we will be transitioning into the breakout groups, where you'll be able to discuss challenges that you've identified using the criteria tool. We will wrap up with some time for full group Q&A, and then some reminders about both the application timeline and process, as well as upcoming events for our community of practice. All right. So as I mentioned, these 5 guiding principles are a framework for your thinking about planning for pathways and for the Part B application process. So we chose the 5 guiding principles as the organizing framework for today's workshop, and we're going to take a walk through all 5 of them now, starting with the first guiding principle, which is equitable access. So at this stage of your process, getting ready for Part B application submission, you are probably thinking about equitable access in terms of outreach and prioritizing your pathway recruitment, enrollment, and scheduling. So practical concerns as well, to ensure that targeted groups of students who've been historically, traditionally underrepresented in higher ed and in high skill and high demand careers, that the pathway is accessible to those students. Also thinking about identifying and eliminating specific barriers. So in your own context, what specific barriers might there be to the participation and successful engagement in pathways for historically underrepresented student groups? And so I'll pause there and ask the peer ambassadors to unmute if you have thoughts that you would like to share with our audience about equitable access.
Annie, I'd like to share if I could. This is Anne Marie from Bourne High School. When we were going through this process, we really, as indicated in your poll as well, with the other participants here, equitable access and enhanced student supports were the two primary areas of focus that we really wanted to really dive into and provide really meaningful thought and have discourse around within our planning team. And our goal was to really do what we could to remove all barriers so that all students who wanted to participate in a pathway could. And I really see in our conversations with our team that equitable access and enhanced student support really walked hand in hand together. Because in order to have students be able to participate, we needed to be very mindful and thoughtful about the supports that we provided for them so they could access the pathways, whether it was the technical courses or the advanced courses.
That makes so much sense, Anne Marie. Thank you for highlighting the link across the principles, because of course they are integrated with each other. So let's move into guided academic pathways now, and just some reminders that in terms of the requirements for designation, pathways need to have at least 2 technical courses and 2 advanced courses. And each of these 4 courses should be a year-long course or the equivalent, whatever is the equivalent of a year-long course in your school's master schedule. The advanced courses should represent college level rigor, and you can look to the DESE guidance document for what DESE's approved advanced courses for that list. But this also means, as Anne Marie was just alluding to, providing student-centered college and career advisement and planning, and also ensuring that students will be able to complete the MassCore requirements by graduation. And again, I want to invite any peer ambassadors to unmute and share your thoughts about the planning for guided academic pathways.
I can share, Annie. I think that I'm Jess Callanan from Reading, that one of the things I tried to focus on was making sure that, one, you have teachers that are excited about teaching the courses so that they can help you with this. And I also tried to weave in, to meet the MassCore requirement, different subject areas into our pathways so that when students were taking the pathway, they were also meeting graduation requirements that move them towards MassCore. So everything within the pathway doesn't have to be separate from or in addition to what other graduation requirements. For example, business or the arts or something like that are woven into our pathways so that kids, it opens up access, but allows more students to take part in it.
Thank you. And that sounds terrific, especially the part about incorporating teachers in your planning. We talk about building an inclusive team, that this is really work that needs to be shared, and that's a way of building buy-in with school staff to include teachers in planning and build enthusiasm early. So we've already talked a little bit about enhanced student supports. These are the kinds of wraparound counseling or advising services that support student success in your pathways, and in particular, giving attention to the access, experience, and outcomes for multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and other historically marginalized groups. But before we move on to the last two guiding principles, does anybody want to add something about your planning for providing enhanced student supports?
This is Meredith, and I just want to chime in that this, in combination with equitable access, really led to rich dialogue, which has shifted the paradigm a little bit in terms of access for other classes. So we talked a lot about not having prerequisites and what that would look like, which was a hard reach for some, but ultimately it led to some good norming about who gets to take these classes and why.
Thank you, Meredith. I always hear your voice saying, but what do we really mean when we say rigor? And that's one of the big questions that can be opened up through this planning process. So just moving into the other two guiding principles, connection to career, the fourth guiding principle, is of course another one that is really integrated across lots of domains of the pathways. Connection to career should be reflected in your course scope and sequence. And as I mentioned that, I'm reminded that we have prepared a resource guide, as we often do, for today's workshop. And in that resource guide, you will find some specifically selected resources from the Innovation Career Pathways Toolkit that are intended to illustrate what we are speaking about in the sorry, my cat just jumped up onto my lap. So we can share that link in the chat to the resource guide. And among the other things that you'll see listed there, there are some great examples provided by folks in the field of what these course scope and sequences can look like. Also, it's a requirement to have MyCap be integrated into students who are part of Pathways, and to use an online platform, whether it's MIFA Pathways, Naviance, or something else, to manage students' learning through MyCap. And then the other element is the internship or capstone project, which is a 100-hour minimum experience, and something that can be coded and transcripted, usually in the summer before 12th grade or during the 12th grade year. So, peer ambassadors, thoughts about connection to career?
I just want to say about that, the more that you can get kids involved in this, the better. We have 55 students participating in that this year, and the response that I get from students who are actually engaged in the internship work is tremendous. They are seeing so much value in that kind of work-based learning experience, that to me, this is really the highlight of all of what Innovation Pathways does. It is connecting students to a career that they're most interested in and developing those employability skills. So this has been transformative at Bourne High School, and then to see students at the end of the year with their senior showcase and be able to explain and talk about their experiences is really, it's incredible. It's incredible work. So this to me is everything.
Anybody want to add to that?
I can, Annie. I think that in Reading, I've worked on this in a prior school, and so I learned some things along the way. And when we started it last year, even though the internships don't happen until students like senior year time or capstone, we leaned into internships to start building those partnerships early and offering it to students outside of the pathways as well, but prioritizing you know, as our students that are just entering the pathway, because we're only in year one, as they become seniors, they will have the priority, you know, to the pathways that connect with their interest and their pathway that they chose. But lean in early, I guess, is my recommendation, is to try to work out the kinks. It's a lot of work, but it's worthwhile. And I agree with Anne Marie that it's an experience for students that really helps them as they step into, you know, being young adults after graduation.
Yeah, that real world learning is so valuable. And I'm also hearing you say it's okay to start small and think of pilots and shadowing experiences or other kinds of small scale work-based learning as a way to build towards and learn what you need to learn to have success at the capstone or internship level. So let's move into effective partnerships, the fifth guiding principle. And at this stage in Part B application, you are going to be asked to demonstrate formal agreements for partnership with your MassHire board and with one or potentially more local employers. And so again, I want to point you to the resource guide where we have linked to some sample MOUs that have been shared by folks in our community of practice. And then I want to invite the comments of the peer ambassadors on finding and forming relationships that lead up to these formal partnership agreements.
I would say that engaging MassHire early in your Part B planning is key to making this work. On the South Shore, we have been super blessed to have support of MassHire for the past 3 or 4 years as we've developed these, and we honestly could not have made the connections that we needed to for bridging K through 12 with industry without having such responsive and nimble support from our MassHire board. So we really credit our success to that connection and that relationship.
Anybody else want to comment on partnerships?
I'll just say that I agree, wholeheartedly agree with what Meredith said. And we also developed an advisory board that kind of brought all of the stakeholders together, including the teachers and my department leads and our higher ed, MassHire, and industry partners. And so although it's kind of an unwieldy group to rein in, it's been helpful in it guided us through the first planning year and did a lot to get everybody on the same page.
Terrific. Okay. We want to take a moment to just offer some reminders about the specifics of the application process, right? So I know for some folks, the guiding principles and these bigger picture concepts are where your thoughts are, and for other folks, you really want the nitty gritty. So you may have seen this graphic before. It is one that shows the annual application cycle that DESE has designed for Innovation Career Pathways designation. And we are currently at about 7 or 8 o'clock on this cycle, where the Part B workshop and then upcoming in January, office hours are provided as part of the technical assistance that we offer to help get you ready for Part B application submission on the 8th of February, 2024. So from learning from folks who have been through this before, we've compiled some tips about the actual application. And I will give you a chance to just read and review these. And I want to ask Jennifer if there are things that you would like to highlight from these tips for the audience today.
Sure. I think something I would like to emphasize is that while you all submitted your Part A's, the folks who are going to be reviewing your Part Bs might not be the same folks who reviewed your Part As. So big tip here is don't assume that people are familiar with your program. Spell things out. If you're not quite there on something, sort of give the fullest picture possible. You don't want to leave anything to the imagination for reviewers. And just try to be as clear as possible in your narratives. And if there are, opportunities, as we say here, I think on the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth bullet, hyperlinking exhibits, definitely make sure they're functional, that they work, that folks can access them. Something that a number of applicants have done in the past, because these become quite voluminous, is create a Google folder and have within the Google folder your application, the narrative, and then clearly label the exhibits. Save them within the Google folder, and then when the time comes to submit, you can just generate an email and drop the link to the Google folder. Of course, make sure that it's set up so that we have access to it, and then zip it over to us via email.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Sure.
We also know that it's sometimes confusing for applicants to understand the way that the application and designation process for Innovation Career Pathways is really separate from the process of seeking funding for your pathways. So again, I'm going to pass to Jennifer just to review some of the information related to grant funding for pathways.
Sure. So historically, we have relied on grants to support innovation career pathways. Just at the outset, I think it bears mentioning we leveraged funding that we got from JP Morgan Chase through New Skills for Youth, and then we had funding for American Student Assistance for planning grants. And we've been fortunate since fiscal 22 to actually have dollars in the state budget for Innovation Career Pathways. So we're actually able to fund 100% of Innovation Career Pathways through the state budget, but we issue the funding as grants. So we're very much tied to the fiscal years for that. So planning grants, many of you have been there, done that. Those are for schools to support them going through designation. It's issued as a competitive RFP in the spring, and it's to assist you with getting through the process. Those are typically due in June. Examples of stuff that people use the funding for: stipends for educators who are preparing the designation materials, help you sort of have a little carrot because we know it's a lot of work. And then we have implementation and support grants for schools that have achieved designation. So for those of you who are going through the process now, implementation grants are available to you upon the conferral of designation. Those are in the amount of up to $75,000. And some examples of stuff that folks spend the money on would be certainly curricular supports, if you want to pay for dual enrollment out of it, transportation for students. You could use it to, again, stipend some folks or salary some folks. Really, you can play pretty broadly with it. The only thing that we would say you could not use it for would be a technology and equipment. And that is something that we can talk about in the Skills Capital Grant, which is administered by the Executive Office of Education. Support dollars are available to districts in years 2 through 5 of the designation, because designation is conferred as a 5-year contract. So support dollars are in the amounts of $50,000 per year. And again, you can play pretty broadly with those dollars. Ultimately, we would like to get away from a strictly grants-based model for this and move to a per pupil model, TBD on that. But for those of you who are interested in capital expenses, again, that's technology and equipment, the Skills Capital Grant through the Executive Office of Education. I know that there's going to be a second round announced for fiscal 24 soon. They're still trying to get the awards sorted out for the first round for fiscal 24. I know that some of you in this group are waiting and have been waiting very patiently for a while. I have been told that you're getting very close. So thank you for your continued patience, but always happy to field questions about funding. Feel free to direct them to me. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, Jennifer, I was just going to say, this is information that often raises school-specific, situation-specific questions about the process or about appropriate uses of funds. And that's a great example of the kind of specific question that is great for office hours. So I know Jennifer put the dates for those office hours in the chat. Everybody on the listserv has received an email about registering for those, and we'll share that link again later in the workshop so that you can sign up for office hours and get these questions addressed. But at this point, what we want to do is really get a little more into some of the resources and self-assessment tools that can help you identify challenges and how you want to move forward on them. So just a reminder that on the MAICP website, there is a toolkit which is has a number of sections that are full of resources that you are welcome to dig into anytime. Of course, today's resource guide is really targeted at Part B applicants. But in section 4 of the toolkit, there is a huge range of articles, guidebooks, protocols, and sample documents from our community of practice. And then I also want to just point you to the FAQ guide because that's a place where we really try to update frequently the questions and answers. And sometimes you can find an answer to a question there rather than needing to send an email about it. So please take advantage of these resources, and we also welcome your suggestions about what we could add to our toolkit resource library. But the tool that we're going to focus on now is the Part B application criteria planning tool. So what you're seeing here on the screen is a PDF version of this document. So don't be surprised if it looks a little bit different than the Google Doc version that you may already be working in. But I'm going to ask my colleague Scarlett to share the link to that Google Doc version in the chat. And what that does, that link will force you to make a copy so that you can work in a document and use this as an opportunity to think through the designation criteria, and the specific criteria are listed here, organized by guiding principles. So hopefully you can build on what you heard earlier in the workshop about each guiding principle to think through where you are right now in your process. Have you really not started working to address that criteria? Is your work in progress? Or are you feeling like you are all set and complete, ready to hit the submit button on that particular criteria? So I want to set a timer for a couple of minutes of quiet time where you can give some thought to your status. So scan your version of the document, thinking about which sections are all set, and that may ask you to think back to your Part A application as well as thinking forward to the Part B criteria. So where are you all set? Where do you need additional work? And what questions are coming up for you as you scan the criteria planning tool? So in just a minute, we are going to ask you to take your thoughts and questions from this tool, and then we'll go into our breakout sessions. Before we do that, I want to just encourage everybody to take a look at the chat and see if you've got a message from anybody on the team asking you where you fit, because we are trying to put folks, for example, folks who are here from Mass Higher, we want to try to place you in a room with the team of a school that you're currently supporting. So just take a look and see if you've got a message. And in a minute, we will set up those breakouts. Before we go into the breakouts, I want to share the community agreements that we use as an Innovation Career Pathways community of practice. These are adapted from the work of Glenn Singleton's Courageous Conversations, and they are designed to provide guidance for our collaborative work. So as you review these agreements, just think about which ones are resonating in terms of the kinds of dialogue and the kinds of feedback that you are hoping both to get today in the breakouts, as well as what you can provide in the form of constructive advice and support to your colleagues. So what is going to happen in the breakouts is you will find yourself with probably 2 or 3 other school teams and a facilitator in that breakout room. And the facilitator will guide you in rounds of conversation that will involve one of the school teams introducing themselves and the pathways that they are applying for, and then sharing which of the planning tool criteria is standing out to you right now as most needing attention and why. So it's really sharing a challenge, sharing potentially, it could be in the form of a dilemma. And then the facilitator will invite the rest of the participants to offer suggestions. And then loop back to the original person who shared the challenge to ask, what are you thinking now? What might your next steps or takeaways be? And we are at 9:40, which is terrific, because that means we should have almost 30 minutes of breakout time. I think we'll bring you back after about 28 minutes of breakout time. There will be time reminders pushed out to the breakout rooms. And again, the facilitator will help keep everybody on track. Hope that you had a terrific breakout conversation. And for a couple of minutes, I want to invite if there was anybody identified in the group who wanted to share an insight or a takeaway or a big question that's still burning, to invite you to unmute and share that now.
I can speak to our group that I think that I was voted at the end there.
I think you're voluntold.
Voluntold.
Because you're so articulate. It's a great honor.
So we spoke about issues that everybody was having, that we quickly realized, that we had common ground to speak about. One of the things that we spoke about was MyCap, and some of us are starting the training or looking to start the training, and we received the update that information is coming. We'll just make sure in our narrative that we write that we are going to be doing the MCAP training. We were able to talk about internships opportunities, what people are doing to find those internships. We had Mary Kate from Mass Higher with us, and she was great to be able to start to connect some of us together. She's offered to have us be you know, have a networking going so that we can support each other. And I think that we all of us are doing the business pathway. We're doing another one as well, but we are going to try to work together on just talking about certifications that we're going for, classes that are being offered. So I think just the networking and the being a team was terrific.
That's great.
Didn't miss anything.
Anybody else want to unmute and share?
I can share for our group. Hi, everyone. I'm Tammy Gage from Pittsfield Public Schools. So I think our group touched on all of the guiding principles, if I'm reviewing my notes, which was really helpful as we're preparing our application. In terms of equitable access, it was our question from our principal, Maggie Esco, about outreach to 8th graders and really giving and providing information for families. We have 2 high schools in Pittsfield. One is a dedicated vocational school, it's Taconic High School, and Pittsfield High School, which has several different types of pathways. So that was a question, and we got some great advice from Meredith and the rest of the group. We also touched upon guided pathways, and I believe it was Phoenix Charter asking about tech courses and their designation that currently exist in their program of studies. And I apologize. Is it Nathaniel? I think his name was Nathaniel. A question about hybrid programming off-site. And Dave Edmonds from DESE offered some good advice about the supports that exist. And then finally, Phoenix Charter with a question about PAC structure or program advisory structure and forming partnerships across a large area with multiple pathways. So a lot of good conversation and definitely some best practices that we shared.
That's terrific, Tammy. Thank you so much. Any other group spokespeople want to jump in? Or anybody from the facilitation team want to share something that stood out from your group?
I can share for our group. We had an amazing group of educators from Pentucket and Rockland and Norwood and Peabody, and we talked a lot about equitable access and guided academic pathways, as the previous groups had shared out. One thing that we started our conversation around was effective partnerships, and folks were able to really share a lot of good thinking around 7-day schedules, waterfall schedules, using semesters for preparing students for internships or externships, so that in the second semester they're actually on site doing work-based learning. So that seemed like a really productive conversation. Anyone else from our group want to share anything? All right.
Corbett, I'll jump in for a second there. We talked a lot about equitable access, and in trying to get some of those students that might have previously shied away or maybe might not have qualified for advanced placement courses. How do we get students into those courses, or to how can we create some of those advanced placement courses and allow for a majority of our population to be able to have access to it? And a few of us had struggled with that as a concern moving forward.
Annie, I can share from our group as well. We had a lot of discussions about a range of topics. One thing that I brought up, which was it was a learning point for me last year when I was doing this work, is not necessarily anticipating that there could be at all pushback about creating innovation career pathways in the community. So there was like a pocket of teachers that felt like it was possibly taking students away that might otherwise take their courses that didn't fall in the innovation pathway, paths, that's redundant, but the importance of really getting out there and promoting the program and doing that like grassroots explanation and cheerleading for the development of the programs, explaining the why behind doing it, thinking about the middle school and really talking to the middle school parents, talking to the middle school teachers that are talking to kids about course selection as they come into 9th grade. So just something I did not anticipate that I will in the future. So.
Mm-hmm. We talked about some similar themes in my group as well, Jessica. So we were Fairhaven, Brockton, Duxbury, and Beverly teams, and the idea of how, when you're building relationships with, say, in your guidance department, so that you can make sure that student scheduling needs are addressed. That sounds like kind of a small specific concern, but it's also a big picture, building your team and identifying the folks who are going to be champions for innovation career pathways and help when you encounter questions or resistance of the kind that you're talking about. It's a big change in mindset that underlies the kind of specific programmatic additions that we're talking about. Anybody else want to put a question out on the table or share an insight from your breakout? And I see there's some good conversation going on in the chat as well, which is awesome.
I can share from my group. Our questions were really around equitable access in terms of recruitment and communication, and also being able to provide student supports to English learners, especially those who may meet newcomers with different levels of English proficiency or even education. And I particularly am happy that my group, I had Braintree, Walpole, and Westfield. I'm very happy that topic came up, because as someone who actually reviews these applications and will be there at the interviews, I know that the one thing for me, especially about I look for, is in terms of recruitment and the different types of efforts that are needed in terms of getting the word out, because I think we understand, as the people who are involved in the application process and in the program, how great these pathways can be for the students and for their families. But recruitment is not as easy as just saying, hey, this is amazing. It takes multiple steps. And I like that there was a discussion about, even if you don't have all the information, just starting off with an outline of what your idea of this program will be and and as a way to explain it to parents. If you have a chance at a parent meeting, a curriculum night, if you have a school newsletter, a website or something, just getting the information out there in various different forms. And obviously, if you have students whose first language is not English, especially their families, being able to understand that you need to be able to translate those things. And getting out all of the recruitment tools that you use and strategies have to also encompass thinking about the families who may not speak English and making sure that you are able to reach out to them. And also talking about the schedules again. We understand the scheduling comes up. We had Westfield talking about how it's great that they have a fixed schedule, which it makes it easier for them to bring in their dual enrollment partners, and also being able to provide student supports on those off days when their higher education partner is not able to come in, and being able to use that as a way to provide supports for students in the advanced coursework. And so understanding that the schedules aren't perfect, even for those who don't have those fixed schedules, if you have a win block or an advisory block, being able to utilize that as a way to provide supports. And so I was happy that we were able to kind of provide these strategies and suggestions to each other based around these topics that I know I'll be paying special attention to during the interview and the review process. So.
LaToya, that's awesome. And also thank you for handing a perfect segue to some of the closing information that we want to share. I want to advance the slide to just show you a couple of reminders about the timeline for the process that LaToya has just been referencing. So Part B applications go in by email and they are due on February 8th, 2024. There is a Zoom interview process that goes along with those applications, and those will be happening in March, and you'll have an email that has been sent out encouraging you to sign up for those applicant interview slots. Designations are conferred in April 2024, and we look forward to celebrating the newly conferred designations and sharing information that is really customized for that stage of the process with you later in the spring at an event that we like to call "So You're a Designee, Now What?" The other technical support that I want to mention again is the office hours. But before we leave this slide, just a reminder that the official DESE documents that are often linked on the maicp.org site, they live on the DESE website, CCTE page for innovation career pathways. So please always check back there for official documents and information on both grant funding and the actual Part B application, final designation criteria, and the application document. As I mentioned earlier, we do have office hours upcoming in January. There are 3 2-hour blocks of time, and you're welcome to sign up for one or more than one of those. You can register on the events and registration page of the maicp.org website, and we'll share that in the chat for you if you want to click through right now and sign yourself up. These are drop-in sessions, and when you register, we will ask you to share questions that you think you want to bring to office hours. That helps us prep so that we can meet your needs when you show up at office hours with specific questions. In addition to office hours, our other January event is going to be a virtual workshop that is a deep dive into equity. So we talked a lot today about equitable access as a guiding principle, but we know that for innovation career pathways to truly be effective at transforming inequities, we need to think about equity not just as access, but also how do we build cultures of belonging and inclusion in our pathways, and how do we focus our continuous improvement efforts on sustaining equity in pathways. So the sign up for that equity deep dive workshop will go up in the next week. So before you leave for the holiday break, check out our website. You'll get an email on the listserv about that workshop. And last but definitely not least, you know that we really value your feedback. And Allison has just put the link in the chat for the survey. I will also put it in a follow-up email to you tomorrow. And I want to remind you that the survey is anonymous. And after you complete the survey, you'll be asked to fill in a form, if you like, sharing your email, where we enter you in a raffle at the end of the year. So the more events you attend and the more surveys you complete, the greater your chances are of winning a prize in our raffle at the end of the year. So we've left you with about 2 minutes of time to click on that survey link right now and fill it out. Please do that. And as we get ready to wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much to the facilitation team. We knew that we were going to need a small army today to have group sizes that would really facilitate deep conversation. And I can tell from those debriefs and share outs that there was great conversation in the breakout room. So facilitation team, thank you so much for your contributions, both in the breakout rooms and to our peer ambassadors for sharing wisdom in the large group session. And then I also want to say thank you for coming and wish the best in your efforts to hit that February 8th deadline for a successful Part B application completion. School teams, you can do it, and it's worth the effort. We are here to help you however we can. Please reach out. And I'll move to a slide that has my contact details as well as Jennifer's in just a second. And we're here to help. So thank you so much for attending today. Wishing everybody a good rest of your day.